Let's turn our simple Fusion graphic into a really cool macro. Over the past few weeks, we have been discovering how to turn a simple Fusion comp that was just some text and some backgrounds into a pretty interesting macro that has customizable effects to toggle on and off. In this video, we're taking all of that and shoving it into a macro onto the edit page and putting just the controls we want the user to have so that it's just clean and easy for them to use. We're going to be making something that looks like this. We have toggleable buttons that we showed off in the last video. We have a layer list that shows the current layers that are being generated. With each of the layers on, we're able to reorder them super simply in this layer list. We have tabs with different icons and without a settings tab or a controls tab. We have an animations page with a bunch of crazy animations. And we have a colors page with all the colors for all of our different things. Today, we're going to be doing this and even more with images and other things as well. Let's take a look at that. If you remember where we left off a couple weeks ago, we had just finished making this cool controls node that will toggle on and off our effects super quick and easily, and disable the nodes and disconnect them. So it's super nice and super optimized for the user experience. We're going to take these controls, we're going to hide the ones that need hidden, and we're going to assign these to the places that they need to go. First, we have a couple of noteworthy things to take care of before we jump into that, just so we can make our life a little bit easier afterward. Over here in text 1 and instance text 1, I'm just going to go to the instance. Let's go over here to the shading tab, and we are going to make sure that 4 is active because we're going to be taking the color controls from 4. And the fun thing about text nodes is if this tab isn't selected, it's not going to show up in your macro, even if it's no longer on the original node. It's a weird quirk of how text nodes work, and I wish they'd fix it. Don't know if it's even possible to fix, or if it's just really, really complicated and it requires way too much reworking. But either way, we have to go in here, make sure that this is selected, and we're also going to de-instance everything, because when the user would select any of these, everything is going to change. Like if we go over to subscribed, it's not going to look like this now because we just de-instanced this. But if this was re-instance, and if we jumped over here, even though we're on the instance, the base one is still changed. So we have to de-instance it, and that will work for us. Now we can change them independently. We also then have to de-instance all of the controls for image and generator. Image may not really be needed, but since it just comes with it, it's way easier to just grab this entire section and just call it a day. So we're going to de-instance all of these. Come over here to gradient, and we can just de-instance the top one, and everything else will de-instance with it. We can make sure about these, see if these need re-instance, but they come from the image, so they don't really need to bother. So we're good there. We don't have to worry about anything else. I believe we are set to go ahead and start turning this into a macro. We need to start by selecting the controls in the order that we want them to appear, or the nodes that we want the order of the controls to be. So we have to, if we take a look back at our little notes over here, I still have this little note. It may have some cat hair on it because my cat likes to get up here. But we're going to start with the master transform and the effects for everything as well. So what we need to do is first select master transform and then hold down control and select the controls node. And then we're going to select each of these individually and then the multi-merge. This is so that we can get the order of the transform node. So that's going to be at the very top. And then we want the buttons for each of these effects. Then we want these controls of each effects, and then we want the layer list from the multi-merge. And then we want to grab all the rest of these in the orders they want to appear as well. So we need to grab the button colors order, we need to grab border colors order, and the mouse colors order next. So I know this is particles, this is mouse, this is button, so I need to grab this and this. Those are for the base button colors. For the border colors, we just need to grab background 2, and instance background is going to look exactly the same as background 2, so we don't have to worry about that. To grab the colors of our cursor and mouse, we need to grab background 3 and background 5, and then grab the one border because both of the borders are the same. And if we wanted to, we could make this an instance. How about just to make things a little bit cleaner, let's go ahead and just make this an instance. because there's really no reason for it to not be. So we can just connect it like this again and back into there, and there's really no difference. We see the cursor is still black. So we need to grab our controls again because I clicked off. So let's grab everything in the same order. And we can grab just background 3 and then just this first simple border because the other two are instants. And then we also, we don't really need to grab the colors for the confetti since the confetti is sort of randomized. And we'll worry about the confetti at the very end when we're with animations because the confetti is kind of its own weird thing. I think we won't even add the controls for it because that can get really unnecessarily complicated. I wanted to completely redo how we're doing the confetti, and I wanted to make it more sparkly like the actual effect. But just due to time constraints and a few other things behind the scenes, I wasn't able to actually get onto that. But I'd love to see you guys work on that and make it your own little thing. Now we need to grab the nodes that handle the animations, roughly in the order that the animations happen. So I know for a fact that the first animations that are going to happen is this mouse zooming out. And since we want the mouse to be first on our list of controls, as we can see on our list here, which I'm kind of randomizing the order of whatever these are actually showing up in, but since mouse is the first animation that takes place, I think it makes logical sense that mouse is the first thing we see. So let's go ahead and find our mouse transitions. So this one is going to be our first moves, so it's going to be this animation here. I think that looks really good for that. We'll just grab the non-instanced version of the P emitter just so we can get some of the P emitter settings. Plus we then get the animation settings from that. Just grab everything else. We don't have to grab everything in any particular order. As long as it's not a control that we want to have the user control like later on, then we can just grab it, hold down your control button, or Mac, I think maybe it's command or something. Group select everything else. It does not matter what order. Rhyme, reason, just grab the things that don't need control. Make sure you grab everything, even if you have groups or underlays or notes you want to keep, and make sure you have those selected too. Even though it's in the comp, it won't be taken. It has to be in the selection. The node in red, or what's also called the active node, does not matter here, but you can really choose whatever one you want. It's really whatever you're going to right click is going to be whatever is turning red anyway. So if we just right click any of the nodes, go into macro, it does not matter what node we right click by the way, create macro, may take a second depending on how much stuff you have in here, but it will eventually load. Let's just start grabbing a few things from inside of here. We're going to go ahead and give this the name of My Amazing Subscribe Animation. Now let's look through everything and just grab what we're going to need. So for master transform, we are going to need to grab just the basic transform stuff. So from center all the way down, we'll even go down to edges in case we wanted to do something fancy with that, I guess. That's all we need for that. We don't need any of the inputs, outputs, or masks. And then we'll look at controls. We don't need the output for controls, which is trying to give us this output since it's not connected to anything. We don't need to have that though. We just need to grab our button. And the keen eyes of you have noticed there's no labels here. Let me clarify though. If there was a non-nested label, you could see it here. But because I'm assuming they don't want you to get confused with actual nests that are built into the node and your own nests, they just don't display a nest. So you have to manually re-add every single nest that you ever wanted to have in your macro. Even if you made the nest, you have to go back and add it into the code later. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's continue choosing some of these options. And then for multi-merge, we do want output 1, which is the only output. And then we just want to come into here and grab our 3 layers. We then just want to come in here and grab layer order. And I'm also going to grab layer selection. We may have to come back into this and maybe change some things because grabbing these can be very weird. Let's go ahead and just find our next stuff. We're going to go down to text, grab the colors for these. We're going to come over here to shading. We want to find where element 4 is, so look for the number 4 at the ends of things. And if there's only the 2 options actually activated, it will only show the 2 options. So we can see we have opacity 4, overlap 4. We need to just look for color and grab everything in this color section. Just jump back in really quick because now we're on to the actual animation part. If you're using Anim Utility, it's going to be a little bit of a weird process to get your controls, and I haven't mentioned this before in a video, so I thought I'd bring it up now. If you haven't heard of Anim Utility, go check out my previous video from a couple of videos ago where I actually go over animating this with Anim Utility. I think it's a great tool for preset and macro makers, just super easy in and out animations or even stage animations, no matter how complex or easy you want to make it. To make this into a macro, we have to do a few things. If it is a center control, so if it is a point control that has two different values that it controls to like put it in a certain spot, like we have our XY right here, within it's going to have a vector. And from the vector, we have to look. We want the origin. This is the original position that it's coming from. With the distance is what's being animated most of the time. And then the angle is the angle of that distance from the origin. Now, in certain cases, you'll probably want to animate angle like we are here in this example. We can actually click on the nodes while we're looking at this window, by the way. If we look and go into modifiers and just look for our transform for center vector, we can see both the distance and angle is animated because we wanted to animate our angle swooping as we're coming in. So for this one, we just have to grab origin and we don't have to grab anything else from this. And then in controls, we can grab in and out. Those are the two checkboxes. You can also grab start and end number, rest number, and end number if you have separate start and end turned on. And then for in here, we'll just grab in anim length, out anim length, in anim start, out anim start from the first things you see. These are the seconds versions of the controls, not the frames versions of the control. It's a little bit confusing because you have to like look through all the labels and everything that's in here to like find the right thing. But just look for anything that's ending with seconds and you might be able to find it pretty easily. But then from that, we have everything we need to actually give the user control over the animation itself. We can also give them the label here. This just tells them whatever node and control it is. We can change this to be a certain name of the animation if we want to. Like we can call this, I'm not going to type it in, but first swoop zoom out animation or something like that. Or like first zoom swoop, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And then we come into in curves and just grab in and out. And this is going to give us our two types of curves to give them. This is the in curve version, and then we have the out curve version. At the start of this, you're able to label these with either in or out. And it will actually show that in the export. So we can keep that as their names, and we can then actually see which one's the in and which one's the out, because it can be confusing if there's just two of the exact same thing there. Now, an important note about this is you have to make sure that you have changed all of the nodes to handle with seconds and not with frames. What that means is we have to go into the controls now, select convert to frames, and it will convert our values into seconds. Sorry, I said that backwards. You'll click convert to seconds, it'll change to convert to frames, but it'll convert everything into the seconds versions of themselves. Now, there are occasional issues I've experienced where the buttons don't want to cooperate, and you might get an error in the console saying something like comp is nil. If this ever happens or something like this ever happens, just restart DaVinci and you'll eventually get it working right. I don't know what the issue is, if it's a button bug, if it's something wrong with my code, or if it's something just wrong with how DaVinci handles that stuff in general. I don't really know, but I do know that if you restart it, it works. So now everything has been properly converted. We just want to make sure that everything is still selected, because I believe when we press on save, we have to have things selected. Let's go up here and we can continue on our search for all of our controls. So in this case, when the resolve is only one frame, we're only going to actually take the in anim start, since we know that the in anim length is always going to be one frame, and we always know that the number is going to be between a 0 and 1. We don't really need to grab anything else besides the start time and maybe checking if it is actually animating in and out or not. Okay, now we're looking at the P emitter, and we're just going to grab, I think, all the regular controls for this. So for the P emitter, we're just going to grab all the start and end stuff, the in and out, and all of these. And I think that's actually going to call it a close for our animation. All right, now what we have to do is come up here and we're gonna save as a group, I think. So we're gonna group it up. We're gonna make it into a macro so it's super easy to get. And I'm just gonna save it as my amazing subscribe button animation, but without the button. Save that. And now let's go ahead and make a new Fusion comp over here. I wanna make sure this is gonna be the same length as the one before. So I'm actually gonna go over here and disable that one and just go into this one. We're gonna come into here and I'm gonna do a shift space and I'm gonna type in my. We just made the amazing one. This is the one that I made for testing. So let's bring this one in and we're gonna see we have a bunch of inputs. Why might that be? Well, most likely they're coming from this guy. So I think I maybe grabbed the wrong things. Yeah, if we look at this, we can see this is the glow layer. This is the drop shadow layer, and this is the raise layer, which is not what we were going for, but it's not going to be too hard to fix either. So if we look at everything, we can see this looks pretty much like it's the correct order for everything. If we change these, not everything changes at the same time, so that's fantastic. If we change this to, like, say, solid color, it will actually change and then give us the 4 colors. This is the mouse color, this is the mouse border, and then here's all of our animations. Pretty cool stuff. And we can see even the spots we have like different amounts of things selected. It shows that. Pretty nice. Okay. Let's make this fancy. First things first, let's fix the layer list issue. We can obviously see there's no layer list in here. We don't see anything actually there. The reason for that mostly is there's nothing actually in there. So if we do enable shadow and enable glow and enable raise, we don't see anything in here, but we do see our inputs have vanished besides this one. Who knows why that one's still here. With everything in there selected now, let's grab this and open up our favorite text editor. In a new tab here, I'm just gonna paste in our code and we're gonna scroll up to the top. This is where a bunch of stuff is stored, but most likely what we're looking for is something called an instance input, but it's going to probably say main input or something up here. So I think it's probably going to be near the end. That's my guess. No, okay. We can see we have main input 1, 2, and 3 right here. Let's remove these because we don't need them. All right, if we come down here, we can see we have layer order and layer selection. If we go to our other document, we can see we have layer order and layer selection. That's exactly what we're looking for. Then we have a few other layers here. We have a shadow layer, a glow layer, and a raise layer. This is bringing stuff from the layer 3 name, from the multi-merge node, so it's same node, and then it's just giving it the name of effect layer order. This, I think, isn't necessary. I think it's only necessary on either the first one or something, maybe just the first one, just like how it is for like a color system. Make sure that your control groups are the same. Since it came from the same comp, it's going to have the same control groups. So let's take these 3 and we'll just plop them right below layer section. And we're going to make sure that the groups are all the same. That looks good. We're going to select all of these now. And I'm actually going to bring in the actual macro from the files. We can see it's in the macros folder. We want to select it all and paste. This is going to put in our new code. If we go up to layer, we're going to see we have our 3 new layer options here. Let's save this. We can even close out this other one because we don't need to see that one anymore. And with this open now, if we come into here and search for that same thing, my subscribe animation, we can see we don't have the inputs anymore, and we can see we have all of our layers here. If we plug it in, we can see all of our layers are also on. So let's go ahead and disable all of our layers, and we can also see they're also going to be crossed out over here. And along with that, we're able to reorder these super duper quick and easy. If we come into the Macrofesto or the create macro window, then we can look and we have the layer order and layer selection that we grabbed from before. But if we scroll down some more, we can see we have a layer name 1. And if we select that, then that is what it's going to be grabbed and put into those slots. Okay, I think the next thing I want to do is put everything on its own page. We just want to start by putting a page, the first input of each page. So for this page, it's going to be center X and Y. and we don't even have to copy this anymore. We are still going to, because we have these disabled now. And I'd rather have them disabled when the user first installs versus having them enabled and it's just a big glowing mess. And here we're gonna once again paste in our new code because this is just an updated copy. And we're gonna come all the way up to the top. And right here on center, we're gonna create a new line, type in page equals, and this is gonna be set equals to a string of main. And that is it. We don't have to put this on any of the other controls for this page. And look at this. We're going to see we have all of those controls and some on the main page. We still have the controls page with controls on it, interestingly enough. Why are those other controls on the main page? And why is origin down here instead of with its counterparts, which is this? The reason is this is going to suck. In making anim utility and /flow utility, I have to manually set the user controls that I have onto the controls page so they're visible from there. But that also will mean that those inherent to this new macro. Let's come into here and we're going to just copy this and we're going to go to the first section, or the first input of each new page. So the next one's going to be some colors. So we're going to come down here past our effects. We have glow and raise. We have our layers, and then right below layers, we have the first instance of colors. We're going to put down a page onto there and call that page color. And then we're going to type in a search for page. So we're going to highlight page and do a Control F. This works on pretty much any text editing software, so don't worry if you don't have VS Code. It'll work on yours probably too. It'll give you a search, and we're just going to search for the next one. If we change all of these controls page, this may not be in yours, or it may look different in yours, but you're usually able to also replace a certain string. I'm going to take this is the search, and this is what the replacement is going to be. I'm going to change all of these pages to a page called animation. And I'm not going to do all of them all at once because there's almost 1,000 of them. So I know for a fact that most of these aren't actually on the node. We're going to do it one by one. So bam, bam, bam. But we're also then going to copy this and put it onto origin, just as an important note before I continue, because origin is the XY coordinate control that was on the same page as all the other controls. All right, right there we can see we're jumping to the next control, and we can see this is a user control that just so happens to look like the exact same setup as our other string. We don't have to change anything after this now though. If we just press the X, we are just fine. Let's press save now and let's see if our work has paid off. Let's bring in our new node and we can see controls is blank, but then we have main with our proper controls on it. We have colors with all of the controls on there. And then we have animations with all of the controls on there. Brilliant. Now let's get rid of controls and settings because we don't want those here. What we need to do is we need to have an active user controls section of this macro. Since we don't have any user controls on it right now, we need to create one. And we just need to create a dummy user control. So we're going to right click, edit controls. We're going to leave new control, or you can call it dummy or whatever. I'm going to make it a slider and I'm going to keep it on the user controls. We don't have to change anything else. I'm just going to make sure that we can actually see it. And it just has a name. I'm going to press OK, and bam, that does it for us. We can copy this now, replace this text, and down here at the very bottom, by default, we're going to see our new user controls section. We're going to remove our control we put into there, and we're going to replace it with hiding the two pages. Over here, I'm going to scroll all the way down and just grab my example, and we can see our two pages, which is common and controls. The settings page inside the code is called common, so that's just what you have to call it. We're going to set their visibility to false, and we're going to set their priority to 0, which means it's not going to be seen whatsoever. We're going to select these both, copy them, bring them into here, and we're going to make sure that we have our highlighting the same sort of pattern, like how we had it over here, how we're highlighting up to this point. We want to make sure we're highlighting up to this point, so when we paste it, it just pastes in just in line. This is then going to remove the two extra pages. If we come into here and preview it now we just have main, colors, and animations, which is just how we want. This is looking really good now. Okay, next, I think what we really need is some custom icons. I think that'd look really nice. We're gonna, once again, I think this is the same code that we have inside of our document, so we're just gonna keep it in here. And we're gonna go up here to Lua scripts. This is where I have all my Lua scripts stored. We're gonna come up here and I'm gonna grab this. This is our template that I like to use for all of my page settings. So let's come on down here, I'll press enter, so we have a new line, and we'll change this to say whatever our first page is. So we'll just say main, and then I'll add some enters into here so we can see this a little bit more clearly, and then put this back one. Cool. We can see this is saying this is visible. It is set to a priority of 1, so it's set to a pretty standard priority. And then it's set to have this calculation icon as its icon. And we can change this icon from a huge list of them. And I'm going to have a link that is a forum post from We Suck Less from the great Andrew over there, who gave us a huge list of all these things you can do. And this also works for fuses as well. So if you're interested about fuses, you can also use these for fuses. And I'm sure you can use them for other things as well. But all we have to do for my quick little swap out example is find whatever ending we want to have as our icon. And I don't have examples of all the icons right here, right in front of me, but this picture right here is actually from the new macro creator where you're able to customize the icon, and it's super easy. But these are all the icons that you're able to choose. I cannot guarantee that they're in the correct order that they have here, but I think these are in alphabetical order. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But you can look at all of those, and when you have that software, you're able to hover over those icons and you can see what they're actually called. So we can see what they're called behind the scenes here. But controls is the regular controls page icon, and custom is the regular user controls icon, or whatever user made page is the icon for. And then all of these are pretty self-explanatory most of the time. I think for this first one, we're just going to choose transform, and that's going to be our first page's icon. And then we're going to put a comma down here at the end, and we're going to select all up to here. And I'm going to do a Control D. That's going to create a duplicate of what I already have. We're then going to make another one called colors, and we're going to look for a different icon for this one. I believe there's already some good ones for colors in here. I think if we honestly just go for the color one, that will work just fine for us. So we'll just do color. Once again, duplicate this, and this one's going to be animations, and animations doesn't have a whole lot of really good ones for it because there's not a lot of animation you can really do in Fusion, at least in the nodes themselves, not within spline panel. But there are some other curves in here. So if we look through, we can see a hue curves, which I think is going to work really good for what we want. We'll just change that out. And now if we were to save this file, let's give her another go. Now we can see we have a transform icon, the colors wheel icon, and a curve icon. So you can really quickly tell what each of these icons are for. On the edit page, these icons are not visible unless you right click and you can actually see them, so you can swap between each page if you want to do it that way. But whenever they do enter Fusion, they will see the icons, which can also be disabled if you're in Fusion just like this. You can just have labels, or you can just show the icons if you really like the icons. I think we have everything basically laid out. Next thing we have to worry about is actually making it so where we can put our labels on here. So we want to start by getting the label that's supposed to be up here. And I'm going to hop down here to our controls node, and we're going to take a look at what each thing is going to be. So in the last video, we colored these to be for each different page. So I know that these two blue ones are going to be for the main page. These two are going to be for colors, and these are going to be for animation. So if we look, as we're hovering over this and look on the bottom left, we can see the control ID. So look over here in the code, we want to come all the way up here to the top of our document. And we're going to come in and start making our own controls. To do this, we're going to just start giving them their own IDs, not even worrying about how many inputs are on there. So we're not even going to be try to follow in this input scheme. We're just going to name them what they are. So this ID is going to be the main XF label. And we're going to make it equal to instance input. And we're going to format it just the same way with a comma down here at the bottom. And we're going to make the source be, I believe, transform, comma that, and then source OP, make that just control. And that then is going to set up a really quick and easy label for our transform node. But we'll see as we hop into here, and we can see it's not there because we didn't actually set its page. We want to make sure that's actually on the main page, so we're going to take the page from this one and put it onto here. Make sure you have a comma there, otherwise you're going to have some problems. Now if we save this and take a look at it again, now we're going to see we actually have one of our things hidden. Now it's only one because if you remember the last video, we made all of these set to 1 just so we didn't have too many or too little and everything looked too confusing. So having it just set to 1, really easy. We can see the line where it's stopping. So super nice. And then we're going to come down here to just above enable shadow and add the effects section for this as well. So I'm going to copy this so that we have the exact same settings to use later. And we'll come down here until we start to see our effects. We can see master transforms ending right there. Add this into here and we'll just change this to be effect, and we'll just change the source to say effects, and we'll get rid of page because that's not needed now. Now if we take a look at this, we'll see we have an effects. Super quick, super nice. Let's do that for the other pages as well. We can see we have transform and effects like we had before. Now we can see we have sub button colors, border colors, and mouse colors, and then we can see we have mouse, button, and particle. Next things next, let's go ahead and make our hider actually appear where they're supposed to be over here. So let's go to the effects nest, just do a search for effects, our first instance of it here, and we'll copy this so it is the same code. And I'll just paste it back into here, and let's go ahead and label these as they should be. So our first one is going to be called enable hider shadow, and we can just call this shadow hider, or maybe even E shadow hider for enable shadow hider. We'll copy these, put this down here, change enable to disable, and then change E to D. And now we have our templates for the rest of these. If we just copy this one, put it above our enable glow, change shadow to glow, bam. Makes it super easy for us to do all of these with having repetition constantly. All right, well, now we added all those. If we add this node in here now we can see we only see the enable ones, and whenever we turn them on, we can see disable, and vice versa. This is really good. This is what we want. Now let's do a little bit of work to make this a little bit more user-friendly. Let's put these controls inside of the disable groups so that when you press on enable, when it shows the disable button, it also shows all of the controls. Let's do that. Right below here, we can start to see we have disable raise, and we can see we have the start of our drop shadow. Let's grab all of the things that relate to the drop shadow node. So all the way down to here, and we'll do a cut and come up here to right after disable hider shadow. Right after disable shadow, we'll paste them in and look for our next victim. Grab glow, and let's do the same thing. And we don't have to do that for raise because raise is already there. So now, if we preview this once again, we can see all of these are where they're meant to be, but we don't hide them yet because we need to go in and change how many of these are actually hiding. So what we can do for that is we can go and search for the actual names of these. So if we search for the ID, we're going to have some results. Come into here, we'll find whatever value it's at. We don't need to worry about that. And in here, we can see where it's being used. We can see it's being set in here with a button code. Some button code is setting it to 0 whenever we're swapping between on and off. But in here, we can see we are setting it to be visible equals true, and we have it set to only have one input. Now let's count how many inputs this needs to have. So this is for the enable hider raise. We maybe actually want to look for just disable. And in fact, let's just look for everything that just is called the disable hider, because that'll help us find all of the things we need to change. So for disable hider raise, come into here, and we need to change this now to say whatever number it needs to say. In Fusion, let's do a little count. So it's already 1. We need to keep 1 because that's the button. So then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this needs to hide a total of 7 controls. And if we save that and just test it, we're going to see that looks absolutely correct. If we enable the raise, and now we have all of our rays being shown down here. That looks perfect, just how we wanted it. Let's do that for glow and for shadow. And with that, we can see all of our controls will hide and show whenever you press for them to turn on. Perfect. Let's do one more addition to this. Let's do our search that we did last time, where we did I see visible. Remember how we set all of those to be true, so we knew that they'd be actually visible. Let's change this now. Like how we said in the last video we would. We'll just do a search and replace them all to say false. So now they'll all be invisible. And since we know there's only going to be these, and we know there's 6 of them, and there's 6 of them in this count, we can just press replace all, and now we can see all of these are now going to be hidden when we next open up the macro. Just like that, we have it super clean. We don't have to worry about any of those nasty controls being there without actually needing to be. We can just press enable and it shows those controls and has the disable button as its replacement. Perfect. All we have to do now is just change the lengths of these and then we'll be good to go. We can do that for these as well, and that's super easy to do. Just as a matter of counting how many controls you have. For this case, guessing works really well. If you just guess that it's about 30 or 40 and then you're too much, back it off by maybe 10. Too little, add on another 10, and then narrow it down from there. You'll probably be rather close to it. But as you can see, I did do some mess ups around here. I'm not going to take time and fix everything, but just know that the next step is just making these a little bit longer, which is just a matter of looking for everything that has inputs set to 1. So if you look for any of these and look for their IDs. So if we look this one's effects, we can change the effects to have more or less. There's one more thing I want to show off before we end off today. Let's go back down to our user controls and let's add our own image. Down in user controls, it's where I'm going to put it because I'm not going to put it in with the rest of our controls. If we come into here, we can put in an image into where the layer list is or where these buttons are and have it inset with the controls. Or you can do something really fancy with it and put it up here in the top so it's more like the header. All right, so to bring in our image, we need to have a setup that looks a little bit like this. The most important part is setting the actual data of your image in here. So then here is we're going to be putting the base 64 to be your image. So to do this, let's go on to the World Wide Web and look for a base 64 converter for images. So just in here, I'm just going to search for PNG base 64. And we're going to probably click on just the first one. That works for me. We're going to click on a search and I'm going to look through my downloads and just find whip templates. I'm going to choose the smaller option. Open that, and that's going to give us an image of about 250 by 38. But the ideal size for an image, and even if it's inside of your controls or inside of the header, found by a user on my Discord, the preferred ideal size is roughly around 355 wide and about 1, 2, 3 pixels high. But you can really make it as high as you want. Just keep in mind, the taller it is, the more space you're taking away from controls. So just bear that in mind. To do this, we can just either show code, copy image, or copy CSS. If we just copy image, we'll copy the correct data. So we'll just copy that. But if we show code, we'll see we have data, image, PNG, base 64, comma, and then all of the data. If we go back into our code, we can see we have data, image, PNG, base 64, and then a comma. If we go out to here and just paste that into there like that, now we can see we have our data stored in here correctly. If you don't see it in this format, go up to a view, or sometimes it's in a different place, but turn on word wrapping for your NLE or your editor for your text. Save this now, and we're going to hop into DaVinci again and just bring this in one more time. And we'll see up at the very top, we have whip templates, really nice and clean at the very top of our macro. The macro creator is coming out very soon for everybody who's curious about that. It may not come out the exact day or week that I'm wanting it to. It may come out a couple of days later, like maybe that following week. I will keep you all posted, but until then, check out this video right here to learn more about scripting for DaVinci Resolve, from the very basics of Lua to making your very first script in DaVinci. And next up, we're doing some stuff in Fusion, so stay tuned for that. All right, I'll see you around. Happy animating.